Hi, yes, hello everyone. I'm Gavin.js and welcome to Grease-tober, a questionable decision where I'll be participating in Inktober, which, if you're not familiar with, is an art challenge where every day of the month of October you use pen and ink to draw whatever the prompt is. There's a list of words, each one corresponds to a different day, and you draw something and then you post it. I remembered Inktober was a thing at about noon on the 1st. So, I've never once remembered an art challenge on the day that it starts, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to do it, but I'm going to put a spin on it because now, while I have attempted to participate in Inktober in the past in the more traditional way, I figured I really want to learn grease pencil, and that's at least somewhat related to Inktober, to drawing in a more traditional sense than my usual media, which is, nodes. So, I figured why not try and combine the two? I want to use grease pencil to really stretch what we can do with nodes and really help enhance my own technical art and start to embrace more imperfection. I've gotten into a lot of a perfectionist mindset. I've always been a little bit of a perfectionist, but nodes and technical art where you're doing more math than maybe art some days really hasn't helped me get out of my perfectionism. So I want to embrace the imperfect, have a little bit of a challenge, and make some art every day. Now, you may notice it is the 3rd of October, which sucks because I've been working on this, but it's been really difficult to do everything I need to do and also this art challenge and then also edit videos. So there's not going to be a video for every single day. There will be a recap of the week at the end of the week where I'll talk about all of the things that I've made, do a quick synopsis, and then I'm going to post a bunch of blog posts as quickly as I can on Patreon, where I have my blog. It's free and available to everyone. I'll post these videos a little bit sooner for my paid members, but otherwise, yeah, all of the blog posts will be there every single day. As soon as I catch up, because I am trying to catch up from the last few days. And for my solid supporters, you guys will get the blend files. They're going to be a little bit of a mess because I'm trying to throw something together and I'm not sure what the final output is going to be for each and every day. I might go back after Inktober, after the month of October is over, and clean some of them up, but you'll at least get those files in the slightly messy form every day. Man, I hope I can keep up with that promise. Yay. Anyway, with all of that out of the way, let's talk about what I've made over the last 3 days because it has only been Wednesday, third. Yeah, it's only been 3 days. It's the third. And I've made some really interesting things because I don't know grease pencil. I really don't know grease pencil. And as I've been saying, I'm a geometry nodes artist. Grease pencil is not what I do. So, prompt number one was mustache. And what I have made here is a little mustache solver. I'm quite happy with it. I've got a bunch of different objects. We're not going to go through all of this, but basically, I've made a bunch of different mustaches as I've been tweaking them. So these are a bunch of grease pencil strokes. The lighting isn't great. I really didn't know how to render out kind of a final piece. So let's get out of the render mode here. But yeah, we have a mustache on Suzanne. So yeah, it's a bunch of grease pencil strokes that follow along with a Bezier curve. So we can make basically any mustache shape we want to fully customize this design. Honestly, it's just kind of fun to play around with. Uh yeah, I don't know. It's really fun. I had a lot of fun with it. Obviously, we can change the shape with the Bezier curve, but we can also say select the middle point here. We can hold Alt S to adjust the radius of our curve. So we have a lot of control over this mustache solver. Let's take a look at some of the other mustaches I've made. So yeah, these are the mustaches that I've made. We have, I mean, they're kind of all the same thing, right? I have two categories here that I've made with different sets of grease pencil strokes. I prefer this one, but this one's kind of fun. This is a little bit more cartoony and whimsical. Whereas this is, I mean, it's still cartoony and whimsical. I don't know. It feels more like a traditional style of mustache. I don't know. They're all just different kinds of mustaches. And same as before, we can grab our point. Oh, right. I forgot. I have a mirror modifier. I made a custom mirror modifier because it didn't work with curves. That's what this set of geometry nodes is for. All it does is scale on the X and join two pieces of geometry together so that we get two curves here. We have a symmetrical mustache. So anyway, yeah, we can, all of the same controls that I just showed. You can scale everything up and down and what have you. So made a few different kinds of mustache. The way that this works is not as complicated as you would think. It took me a little while to get here, but basically, we have an object info node. This is our grease pencil object, which I'll show in a minute. We convert that grease pencil into curves and resample them so that we have plenty of resolution. Then let's hide some of those so that it's easier to read here. Then we're going to set the position of all of those curves and convert them back into grease pencil. Turns out you don't need to do that, but I didn't know what I was doing. We could just leave them as grease pencil objects. Grease pencils are splines, so we can do everything with grease pencil that we can with a spline. There are a few caveats there where it has to be a curve, but uh, for the most part, I have found through trial and error, you can just use grease pencil curves as curves. Anyway, what we're doing here is we're going to take the input Bezier curve. So we have this Bezier input curve. We're going to sample that curve. I'll talk through how we're sampling it in a minute, but we use the position along our curve to reset the position of all of our Bezier or all of our grease pencil curves. And that's basically it. This is the heart of what's going on here using the position of our grease pencil object. But I need to show you the grease pencil object first. So which one do we have here? Mustache layers 3. I did a lot of testing. A lot of this is just saving a bunch of objects as I was testing. So, okay, where are our mustache layers? Here they are. Okay. So we have this collection of grease pencil strokes, basically. Gonna turn all of that stuff off so it's easier to see what's going on. This, if we hop into draw mode, is, yeah, just a bunch of drawn curves. I used tablet to draw out a bunch of curves and basically I've graphed them. These are individual hairs that I've just gone along and drawn a bunch of straight lines. I have shorter ones at the edges, longer ones in the middle. That's important for the style of the mustache because we're going to take all of these curves and we're going to organize them based on their length and their Y offset. Their Y offset is going to determine where they are. We're going to change that Y offset with the radius of our Bezier curve, and we're going to take the most negative X value, set that to the beginning of the Bezier curve, and then the most positive value, X value, set that to the end of our Bezier curve. And that's how we're going to remap all of these points so that they all follow our Bezier curve nice and smoothly. So if we look back at this mustache that we were looking at a second ago, it's got a bunch of additional lines, and that's because I've drawn some more lines. If we go back into draw mode and I draw way off to the side, it radically changes where all those hairs are because we have one line that's way off on the y-axis. So that's how you can control a lot of the style. Let me just get rid of some of those so it doesn't fully break this mustache, right? And now it's here, let me show you that. Get rid of that, get rid of those. We've got the original mustache now. I can trim off the longest ones, and now we've got a different looking mustache. And in fact, it's got kind of a weird break in the middle. That's because I got rid of all of the longest ones that were most centered on the y axis. Anyway, let's take a look at the other style that I made. This is this mustache shape, which has a very different graph. I'm imagining this shape where we're drawing all of these strokes as a graph of strokes, a graph of all of the different hairs, and then we align those with the Bezier curve. So we've got some that are going backwards, we've got some going forwards, we've got them less centered on the y-axis, and so it creates this very different shape. These are literally the same Bezier curves. I just duplicated the object and gave it a different mustache object, grease pencil object, as I have it labeled in the geometry nodes panel. And that's what gives the different look here. So yeah, I think this would be the final render that I would do for this uh, prompt. Is just a bunch of mustaches, maybe with a background. It's maybe not the most creative, but I think it's a very technical display of what I can do with this solver, this mustache solver. It's just an easy way to make any kind of stylized mustache. Okay, so this is day 2. The prompt was weave, and I wanted to animate this. I've run out of time to animate it. So I guess it's again going to be a technical display as opposed to a finished piece of art, which is annoying because I do want to have finished pieces of art, but I ran out of time, and there's a reason there's a timer, right? So what this is a I don't know. My wife said it looked like one of those finger traps. Yeah, we had as kids. You put your fingers in either end, and then you can't pull it out. You have to push them together. Anyway, looks kind of like that. I was thinking of paracord as I was making it. The way this works is, again, we have a grease pencil curve that we draw, and it creates a bunch of different curves. That's kind of the long short of it. We've got some interesting trig here. I'm not going to try and step through because I need to also edit this video today. So it's not that complicated. It just looks really complicated. It's a little bit broken there because it's got some bend. Let me just smooth out this curve real quick with the sculpt tool. Just smooth that out. And yeah, we've got some randomized colors. What we're doing is using a repeat zone because I'm sure there's a way to do this with fields and what have you, but I just didn't want to think through that. If my brain was going to work a little bit better with a repeat zone. So the idea is that we have a curve that we've drawn. We're going to convert that grease pencil curve into a curve. Didn't really need to do that, I don't think, but I did. Then we're going to use some trig to offset it. The way it's going to be offset is based on the tilt of our curve. So we'll take the length of the curve and then multiply that by however much we want to get X number of twists along it. I like the math determines how long each twist is. But anyway, we'll tilt the curve so that it's spun along itself. Then we'll use the normal to offset each point uh, by the normal, which has been tilted. So then you get a spiral pattern. We do that a number of times. And so by doing it a number of times, we're going to duplicate that curve. That's why we have two different geometry strings going through here. Uh, this top one is always the original. We don't adjust anything on the original. It just goes straight through and then comes back in again, which is why we take that original, set the tilts, then set the position by scaling the normal and join that with this second input, which was the previous iteration's geometry. It adds together that geometry. This is something that's done implicitly in the for each element node, but in the repeat node, we have to do it manually here by having multiple sets of geometry and joining them together. Anyway, a lot of trig here. I want to step through how that works, but we've got to move on. The math isn't that hard, I promise. Uh, Go ahead and take a screenshot if you want to think about how this math works, because that's really all this is a bunch of okay, based on how far along we are on this curve, how much is it going to be tilted, and then how far off is it going to be scaled? Because the more complicated part of this is also changing the amount of scale based on uh, the iteration that we're on, so that and how far along you I guess the same parameters, but to get it so that it goes in and out, giving it a sine wave so that when they all overlap, they're woven together. Each strand isn't aware of each other. I thought about using geometry proximity to make this weave, but that's a bit of a red herring. It doesn't work as easily as I'd like it to, so instead we use some trig to just have them interweave together. And yeah, that's kind of it. Oh, and I set a random color per the index number. I wanted to have a little bit more artistic flair with it, a little bit more control, but I just ran out of time. So it's just random colors so that we can tell all of the different threads apart and see that they are woven together. Oh, and one last thing, it's kind of important to use the 3D 3D depth to assign the draw call for each of these, because they're not, well, they are 3D object. Grease pencil is weird. Big takeaway for me, grease pencil is weird. So if we set this to 2D, which is the default, if we just mute that node in altogether, they don't look like they're woven together. They're just randomly assigned which curve is on top and which curves are on the bottom. So we use the set grease pencil depth node to use the 3D location to set the draw call for all of our curves, and that's what allows us to see the depth of all of them. All right, and day 3, I wish had gone better. I have a whole forest that's been drawn here, but I'm just going to show you the couple of trees for now. In fact, we're going to delete all of these so I can show you the real magic of this scene is that we can draw individual trees. And I'm going to show you the magic of it because it's far more impressive than just the final render, because ah I wanted to style it more, but again, I ran out of time. So we can draw trees, and that's a really weird curvy tree, but we can bring in sculpt mode, smooth it out, maybe even grab it and pull it into a nicer general tree shape. There we go. I don't know, maybe it has some bend here at the very beginning, but regardless, Uh, let's just smooth that out again, and we have a tree. I was feeling inspired by aspen trees, so that's kind of what I was going for, and just this nice gradient. Anyway, the prompt was crown, and I wasn't feeling very inspired by like a literal crown, the headgear. I wanted to draw the crowns of trees. And so I spent some time figuring out, okay, how can we procedurally make the crown of a tree? And this is what I've got. Okay, so while editing, I realized I recorded a bit about me talking about the radius of our grease pencil pen and how that's used to draw these trees, but when drawing with the mouse, it doesn't change the radius. It's just a straight curve with no radius change. That's what both of these trees are. Instead, what we want to do is use and then I plugged in my tablet, drew a few lines, but it wasn't working. That's because I chose the wrong grease pencil pen type. So instead of these, we're going to use one that has pressure sensitivity set for the radius and then with a tablet. And yeah, we're going to draw a tree. So I'll just, with light pressure, we have not a ton of leaves. With real hard pressure, we have way more. So we have some interesting dynamic control over the amount of leaves, even in different regions on the same stroke. So, yeah, that's what I'm talking about whenever I reference radius. I just didn't record that right the first time. Anyway, but so we have trees, and we can draw a whole forest of trees, which is what I've done here. And that was kind of the final render that I wanted here. I have a camera just looking at the tops of the trees, and this is as far as I could get within the amount of time that I have had today. Yeah, because I had to leave time to record and explain all of this and all of the things. Anyway, the way this works, and we're going to have to turn those trees back off because it's a little too heavy. I didn't do a great job managing my instances for this one, and this is the most spaghetti we have so far. But so we have two sets of trim curves. One is going to end up becoming the trunk of our tree, and the other is going to instance all of our leaves. Yeah, we just have a curve to mesh based on the factor. We have a float curve here, so we get this shape, which is going to be our trunk. We'll set a material, and that is the trunk of our tree. The material is really silly, to be completely honest. We just have coordinates, some noise, some more noise, a color ramp. Yeah, that's basically it to get just generic random black lines on the trunk of our tree. It's not the best, but it works, and that's the important part. Then in our for each element loop, we're going to trim our curve and then make a new curve to mesh node to make this top section. We're going to use that, and scale is based on radius. And our scale is based on radius, so this expects you to be using a pen, but if we draw a new one and increase the radius, we'll see we'll get a thicker. Oh, we're in a for each loop, so of course we don't see the curve. We'll get a thicker tree with a lot more leaves, and now it's starting to get a little bit silly. Uh, so this scene very much expects the use of a pen. But anyway, we're creating a curve to mesh with the radius and a multiplier on our radius to then distribute points on faces. These points we're then going to instance some grease pencil leaves. And that's what we have drawn here. These leaves are again organized. Now, these leaves are not organized like we had the mustache hairs. Instead, they're just all arbitrarily placed, except for the y-axis. The y-axis is important. I wanted all of the ends, the starting points to all of our leaves to be somewhere close to the x-axis here. And then they're just wherever I drew them. All of those gaps are leaves that I didn't like the shape of, so I just erased them. And then I have some geometry nodes to reset all of their positions here at the origin so that when we instance them, they're all at the same spot and we can pick instances and make it so that only one shows up, but they'll all have the same offset. If we didn't offset them like this, if we didn't reset their position, I should say, then they would all stick off weird off of the tree. So that's just to reset the position, give me some space to draw out a bunch of different leaves and get some variety in the shape that we have for our trees. And I guess on top of resetting all of their position and whatnot, we also have to make them into individual instances. So for each element node, we're going to both set that position and then also make each one individually into an instance. If they weren't instances, we couldn't actually use the pick instance node, and it would just be annoying to do this inside of the node tree for our tree. So we're just going to do this on our leaf collection. It's not really a collection, but I'm treating this like a collection of objects. And yeah, then we have a bunch of custom leaves that we're able to instance onto all of our trees. Yeah, and then we realize the instances because unfortunately we can't change any of the colors if they're instances. And we're just going to use the Z location, so wherever they are along the tree, to set the grease pencil color. No, that's not what that is. Hold on. No, wait, I forgot. No, I forgot. We stored a name attribute, and this is using the same sort of logic that we did for the mustache. We're going to take the Z position, use the minimum and maximum of that Z position, and a map arrange node to map all of those Z positions for each of our trees so that all of our leaves are in the 0 to 1 range, and then we can use that Z value and a float curve to just have a little bit more customizability to then drive the mix node to switch between our two different colors here. And that's how we get this interesting gradient on the crown of our tree. That goes into a set grease pencil color because again, we've stayed as grease pencil, or no, this became curves, but all of our instances are still grease pencil curves. And then we need to use again the 3D location for our pencil depth because if we use 2D, it it looks fine until it doesn't. Yeah. Join everything together, and that is our tree. And those are our crowns. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching. This has been a little bit of a journey. It's only been 3 days. We'll see what happens the rest of the month. I've got some great ideas for the rest of the prompts, and I've been enjoying learning about grease pencil. I don't love the art that I've made so far, but this really is for me a learning journey. And by the end of the month, I'm excited to see what we can do with the combination of grease pencils and geometry nodes. So, anyway, thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you want to play around with these projects, there's going to be a little bit messy, and I'm sorry, but they are available on my Patreon. Uh, they're available for my solid supporters. That is, you do have to be a paid member to get them, but I will be writing up blog posts for each of these days. I can't promise when this video goes up that there will be ones for these projects just yet, but if you're watching this in the future, check it out. There will be a blog post for each of these explaining a little bit more of some of the math and how I made all of this. Also, just huge thank you to my patrons. And also just huge thank you to my patrons. You guys are amazing. I know I haven't been very active for a while, which is something I'm trying to fix. This is part of me trying to fix that. So thank you guys. You are amazing. It means the world to me that you're interested in my work. And so I guess with all of that said, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.